Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Beautiful, chilly Saturday afternoon here in Appalachia. Got all my notes ready. Got a fire roaring. Cold, it's windy, clear blue sky. Nothing but sunshine and blue skies on this beautiful Saturday afternoon. And I wrote up all my notes from 2 weeks ago when I was down in Costa Rica at Rythmia doing the plant medicine ayahuasca. And I will go through and describe what happened during that week because it was quite a week. It feels very surreal right now. It's 2 weeks ago I left Rythmia and stayed the next 5 days in Tamarindo, Costa Rica, and then I arrived home 1 week ago today, last night. So we go back to Monday, December 16th. I arrived on Sunday, December 15th. 5 years to the day since my last trip. So this is trip number 4. So Monday night, we have the basic intentions, which starts out with "Show me who I've become." So what happened here is what was interesting is they changed the brew, as I call it, the ayahuasca. They used to do Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesdays. They would do what they called the Brazilian brew Monday and Wednesday, and then Brad's brew. He made his own. He was one of the shamans there. He's gone now. All the shamans are now Costa Rican, which is interesting. So what they're doing now is a heavier brew. It's almost like doing yahe 4 nights a week. It was very purgative, very draining for me physically. I did 2 cups. Did spent a lot of time on the toilet, shitting out guilt, a lot of guilt, and that was a theme for the first couple nights of the ceremony. First couple nights of ceremonies. It was guilt that I had been holding on to basically since my last relationship ended, where after I flogged myself for a couple of years, I had to release this guilt. It was one of the reasons why I went back. I saw some visions of a snake after the first cup, and I'm told that this is by one of the helpers while I was getting the second cup, and he said that's good. The snake is basically Mother Ayahuasca showing herself, which is very interesting. It was a rather faint, but it was definitely there. I can still see it as I go through my memory banks. One of the things that they had a session for those of us who had returned, and they talked about what they called the 333: 3 gifts, 3 freedoms, and 3 awarenesses. I'll try to throw this up on the screen. The 3 gifts are forgiveness for all, recoding my DNA, which happened Thursday night, and then past life resolution. For me, that became healing the lineage, my lineage, mostly my father's side, which I've talked about before, where I am the healer. I must do the work for my ancestors and my children. I shared this with some people in the group too, of what I have experienced along those lines. The 3 freedoms are freedoms from the opinion of others, freedom from my opinion of others, and freedom from my opinions of myself. And the 3 awarenesses were the awarenesses that you are not your thoughts, the awarenesses that you are not your body, and the awareness that your spirit is eternal. Both of these came up Monday night while I was lying on the mat. So that was it for Monday, basically. Monday was a lot of lying on the mat, a lot of going to the bathroom. Basically just a cleansing night, just cleansing all this stuff out of the body. Kind of a preparatory night for what was to come next. Tuesday night, December 17th, merge my soul at all costs. That's the basic second of 3 intentions as you walk through this process. This night, Tuesday night, was one for the record books. I have never experienced such a night. The first cup brought on more releasing of guilt and a lot of visual effects. I had a lot of what I was seeing, psychedelics, the hallucinations. I had jokingly complained earlier that I did not see much on Monday night, and this all changed during the first cup on Tuesday night. And then after the visual effects, I was surrounded by a group of beings. It's very interesting. I was surrounded by this group of beings, and they levitated me off the bed to a height of about 3 feet. It was fascinating. And then they set me down gently. At this point in time itself started to feel very odd. And what it turned out to be was what I described, actually described this to the group afterwards, in what each one of these episodes that I went through on this Tuesday night was wrapped inside of what I called an eternity bubble. It felt like what was happening at the moment, like being levitated, was going to continue forever, just for eternity. There was just eternity, nothing else. No beginning, no ending, just eternity. And it was kind of in this bubble. It was so weird. And it happened all through the night. And I wasn't feeling well because this ayahuasca was very draining. And I did want to go for the second cup, but I did. I said to myself, I have to be a strong example to my 5-year-old self. Now, the 5-year-old self is what is part of this merge of the soul. It's the healing of the inner child. The first time this happened to me 5 years ago, it was a very, very explosive experience, very powerful experience, the most beautiful moment of my life. And this time I did merge after I got the second cup, and I thanked the shaman on behalf of my 5-year-old self. I said, my 5-year-old self thanks you. And she smiled. And I laid down, and Mother Ayahuasca said, okay, that it was now time to go to work. You had your fun, you had your psychedelic experience, got all your visuals. Now it's time to go to work. And we did. And then from this point on, it was just these series of scenarios played out one at a time in a what I called the eternity bubble. And each event felt like it was going on for eternity. There was no time at all. So one of the first things that happened was I was healing my inner child in my mother's womb. I had never gotten that far back. I'd gotten back into early childhood before. But this time I got all the way to the womb. And I was not the only one in the group that did this, because one of the guys I was talking to later, whose name escapes me right now, Ryan, he was healing in the womb that night too. But I was healing the fetus. I felt that this could be more guilt, as I was conceived out of wedlock, and my parents at this time in 1957 would have been going through a lot, as they had to tell the grandparents and family, and then about the pregnancy of me, the conception of me, and then have a quick wedding. So I've thought about this a lot over the years, and I'm sure that there's a lot of trauma that I absorbed during that time in the fetus, in the womb. And here I am now finally releasing it, which is a wonderful thing. The next thing that happened now, the next eternity bubble that comes along, is I merged with my soul again. It wasn't as dramatic as the first time 5 years ago, but I could feel it all the same. My inner self, my inner child, just healing, hugging. You know, what you do is you ask your inner child, what do you want? You know, and it could be, for me, it's always as simple as a hug. I just want a hug, and that's it. Then we passed on to the next series of events, and this was what they sometimes call ego deaths. I don't know if it was my ego dying, but I started dying. I felt like I was dying, and I was dying so fast that I couldn't count them. So as I told the group later, on my last trip, I died 7 times in 5 nights. And they were very explosive and very dramatic, usually at the crescendo at the end of a song. These ones were just shoo, shoo, shoo. It was just going so fast. And I joked about how I was literally sitting on the toilet, shitting and dying at the same time. It was so weird. I said, can't wait till I get back to the mat. But I felt like I died 100 times. Um, it was just mind blowing. I got to throw some more. The wood's burning fast because we got all this wind out here. I got to throw some more wood on the fire here. Stay warm. It was just an amazing, amazing night. And I'm still amazed at everything that happened that night. so now the dying calms down, and all of a sudden I'm pinned to the bed, just like this. Not quite on the cross, but kind of like this. And I'm pinned, and okay, I know what this means. And sure enough, the mantis being showed up, and they worked on my entire body for a while. And again, it was another, just another eternity. I'm just laying there, and they're just, okay, yep, I can feel you. I know you're benevolent. Go ahead, do your thing. And they just worked on my body as I laid there. And then after a while, that scenario ended, that eternity bubble, and then everything got quiet. And now the way they have the room set up is this is another change they've made, is we don't mix everybody together. They put all the women on one side and all the men on the other side, and in the middle is the altar and the clear space where you line up to go get the medicine. So all the men are over here, and most of them are behind me. I'm kind of in the middle of most of them. And some of them, all of a sudden, my brothers started purging, and purging powerfully. Most of it's vomiting. And you're not vomiting up like you do with food poisoning or something like that. This is a very deep, guttural emotions coming up out of the body. And so there's very little physical coming up into the bucket, but it's you're actually told to look down and go, what are you? Tell me what you are. You always ask questions. What's happening? What am I purging? What am I feeling? And so my brothers, this started one at a time. And I was asked by Mother Ayahuasca to assist them. So as one of them would start, I would get nauseous in my stomach. And part of me would want to get up and go to the bathroom. And I said, no, I'm just going to process this. And the way to do that is just breathe in, breathe out, relax. This too shall pass. And with a few breaths, this nauseous feeling goes away inside of me. And then they would finish purging one at a time. This was going on one at a time. And this continued as it seemed each brother took turns. And there's probably about 40 of us. And they took turns going around purging, almost one at a time. And once in a while, there was a couple times where I felt I was helping one of the women, but mostly it was my brothers. And then I found out the next day when we were talking in class that one of the younger guys, Christian, very nice young man, he was also asked to help. And he said that he was doing the same thing. He wasn't purging. He was there breathing with his brothers. And so both of us, at least the two of us, were assisting the rest of the group. So we were operating as a group in a way. And at the end of the night, when I recited all of this that happened to me to the group, and the women and the other guy and the guys in the group, a lot of them commented about how powerful the energy was coming from the men's side of the room. And as I told my story to the group afterwards and all this, I also volunteered to hold a men's group later on for my brothers, as my journey, part of my journey was healing the divine masculine. But we actually got this set up for Friday morning, but it never materialized. And I was told Friday night why it never materialized, because it wasn't meant to be. It's my journey. Each of them had their own journeys. And I was there for me. and I accepted that. And by Friday morning, I didn't have any strength left to do the class anyway. I did have a whole outline set up, but I had no strength left. So each night we got back to our rooms about after 3 a.m. And this night, Tuesday night, I didn't sleep at all once I got back to my room, and then I went to yoga at 7 a.m. And that was tough. Yoga and the breakfast, and then we have the Answer Is You class in the morning. And then we had on Wednesday. Now we're on Wednesday, December the 18th, which is Heal My Heart night. But we had a meditation class, a sound of meditation class at 11 a.m. And I was so exhausted that I laid down and I just blacked out. I just passed out immediately on the mat. And I awoke with about 1 minute left in the class. And I was just exhausted by this point, as I had not slept much since Saturday. When I left, my Saturday afternoon is when I left here to go to Charlotte. So Friday night was the last good night's sleep I got, and it was starting to take a toll on me physically. So the theme of the Wednesday night ceremony for me was compassion, empathy, and love for self, little s and big S. And Wednesday night is also ladies' night. So they had a lady shaman here. She was so darling. Costa Rican young lady, just beautiful. And all her helpers. And I drank the first cup and laid down, totally exhausted. Went to the bathroom one time and I was sitting there just crying. I was so exhausted. So I gave myself permission to be gentle with myself that night. And I just be gentle. This is Heal My Heart. I'd already gotten a new heart back on my second trip. I didn't need anything dramatic again. I was just, how do you heal your heart? One way is just be gentle with yourself. Let yourself rest. So I went back to the mat and I couldn't fall asleep. And I realized that I was very ungrounded. I was restless. I hadn't done any Qigong since Saturday morning. And I felt very ungrounded. And I went outside and I stood in the grass, barefoot, staring at a full moon. And I did some Qigong movement. I just intentionally grounded myself right there. And by the time I was done, I did some very simple flowing movements and some breath and some healing sounds. I do it all together. And I just felt a lot better. I felt rejuvenated for a while. And I went in to the Maloka, and by then they were all the shamans and their helpers had gathered round, and they were playing the Ikaros, which are the songs, and I just started dancing, and I just let myself flow for the rest of the night. Just 1 cup of ayahuasca, and I just let myself flow with the music for the rest of the night. It was beautiful, just a beautiful experience. And I just being gentle with myself, bathing in the feminine energy of the moonlight, was healing to my heart and soul. And it was lovely, very lovely. But I was still very physically exhausted. And on Thursday, I spent most of the day in bed trying to rest because I was just drained. And Thursday night is the all-nighter. It's the Colombian tradition. We start a little later. It goes very slowly, and it goes all night until the sun comes up. So we start the night with each going one-on-one with the shaman, and they bring in, this time they brought in Leo, who's a Costa Rican. Really nice guy. First time I'd ever met him. And we all go one-on-one, and you sit down in front of him, and you tell him what your intention is. And I'm going to throw some more wood on the fire here for a minute. It's burning fast. So I sat in front of Leo and I said to him, my intention is to die. And he looked at me kind of puzzled, and he says, "You mean physically?" And I laughed and I said, "No, no, not physically." And he goes, "Oh, you want a deep cleansing." So in his words, now if it was Mitra who had been there before, and I was to say to Mitra, my intention is to die, Mitra would say, this is a very good intention. But Leo, no, it wasn't. So Leo wanted to change the words. And he goes, "So you want a deep cleansing, something like that?" And I just said, yes. And be careful what you ask for. So we go, everybody finishes talking to him. The 80 of us, you can imagine, that takes a good hour and a half, even at 1 minute per. Um, and so I go back to the mat. I was one of the last ones. And they call us up for the first cup. And I drank the first cup, went back, laid down, and laid there for quite a while. But after a while, I was laying on my right side, and I was breathing in, relax, relax, and I would yawn. And I call it the elephant yawn because my mouth feels like it's about this big, like I'm giving birth. And I would yawn, and I asked, and I'm yawning out anger, and I'm yawning out impatience. And this went on for a long time. In fact, it went on the whole time they called and were serving the second cup of ayahuasca. I'm sitting there yawning, just yawning. And then I would be breathing in some forgiveness, which was a big theme for me for the week, was forgiving myself. But I never got up to go to the second cup because after all this purging happened, I was on my back and I got pinned to the mat again. And I saw something above me as it was coming down, and there were some lights, and it was kind of strange. And all of a sudden, it kind of like encompassed my head. And all of a sudden, I felt like my skull was expanding. It was rather uncomfortable. And I said, "Okay, what's going on here?" And excuse me. Can't do that in the wind. The so I asked what was going on here, and I got the response I got was that we want to recode your DNA. And I checked in and I said, "Yeah, this is benevolent." And so I said, "Okay," and let it happen. Didn't take very long. They said it won't take very long, and it was very uncomfortable. I asked later on who did this, and I was told that it was a group that calls themselves the Guardians. Now, if you go back and watch one of my other videos about astral abductions, on January 20th, 2020, so 5 years ago, when I was in a sound, crystal bowl sound healing session, I was abducted by this group called the Astrally Abducted, not physically abducted, by a group that called themselves the Guardians. And when I asked them what they wanted, they said, "We want some of your DNA." So now here we are 5 years later going full circle. At least that's the way I'm reading it. I'll do some more inquisitions on this as time goes on, but that's what it felt like. I was not the only one that got a DNA rewrite that night. I think my buddy Ryan did too. But I relaxed for the rest of the night, and then we had the big cleansing ceremony where they do the men and the women separately, and they take all the men, and they used to put us in a half circle. Now they line us up in a bunch of chairs, and the shamans go one person at a time doing this cleansing ceremony. It's quite intense. A lot of smoke, a lot of oil. Basically just sitting there with just shorts on, and you're just top of your body just gets covered with smoke and oil. Very healing, considered to be very healing. And then after that, it's just relax for the rest of the night and watch the sun come up. But yeah, Thursdays are always a treat for the cleansing ceremony. So we finally got out of there, and it was late because we had such a big group. And Friday, I went to the morning class, but I still felt terrible. I skipped the afternoon class. They had an afternoon, they called the Dance of Liberation. I skipped that and just laid in bed. And then tried to get some sleep, which wasn't easy. I went to breath work at 7 o'clock that night, Friday night. And the breath work gets very intense on Friday nights for me. And sure enough, it did this time. I started screaming, started yelling, purging. Basically, it's a form of purging, but I actually strained my throat and my vocal cords. And I also had a death. I crossed over again. This has happened before. This time, my mother came in and assisted me in this, in much the way that I assisted her in crossing over back in November 2009. So that was very emotional, feeling the spirit of my mother there. And then that class ended, and I went back to my room. But it was downhill from there for quite a few days, because Saturday morning I had breakfast Saturday morning. I went to the closing group class, but I couldn't finish, and I had to leave. I went back to my room, and I ended up going to the clinic. I felt so lousy, and my throat was just so inflamed now. They sat me down and gave me a little anti-inflammatory, and it helped for a little while. I was scheduled for at 1 o'clock Saturday to get a stem cell treatment. They do that at Rythmia, but I canceled it because I was so weak, and they reimbursed me fully because I'd already paid for it. And I just spent the rest of the day in bed, but I had a lot of trouble sleeping. For example, during the middle of the night, Saturday night, I got up to go to the bathroom, and I literally collapsed under my own weight. I was so weak by now. And I landed on my sits bone, and bruised it. It was bruised for 5 or 6 days. Fortunately, I didn't land on my head. I would have cracked the tile. But Sunday morning, I was so weak that I actually returned to the clinic for a while. And then I was able to gather up enough strength to pack and take the shuttle to Tamarindo and my lodgings for the next 5 days. So from Sunday through Wednesday, I spent most of my time in bed, although I wasn't sleeping well. I was moaning, and I was just feeling terrible. Monday, I went to the nearest cafe to try to eat something and have a cappuccino. I actually drank a little bit of the cappuccino and had to go over across the street to the ditch and dry heave. I couldn't hold anything down on Monday. I canceled the breakfast I ordered. I just couldn't hold anything down. The waitress and the kid working there, they came up to me more than once, and they said, "Are you all right? Are you all right?" And I went, "Yeah, I'm all right. Can't you tell?" It wasn't until about Wednesday on Christmas Day, I managed 3 cappuccinos and 2 fruit smoothies. But by now I was losing weight, and I was weak, very physically weak. On Thursday, I mustered up enough strength. I went to this lady from I had eaten there before 5 years ago. She's from Sicily, and I had some bacon and eggs. I knew that I needed some fat and protein, so I woofed down some bacon and eggs, and I really started to feel better. That helped a lot. I went back there in the evening, and I had some chicken and penne, which was really good, reminded me of Italy. And I finally got some strength back so that I could go to the airport the next morning. So Friday morning, I managed to gather enough strength together to get to the airport, had lunch at the airport, and get on the plane, and then arrive in Charlotte and drive 4 hours in the rain home. Got home just before midnight. Two of the funny things that occurred on this trip is that, and I realized this when I was at Rythmia, but I forgot my bathing suit. So I never went into the pool, and I never went into the ocean. I walked along the beach a couple times while I was in Tamarindo, but it wasn't easy because I just had no strength at all. But I forgot my bathing suit, and I forgot my comb. And my hair needs to be cut, and it's thick, and not having a comb was kind of difficult. But we survived it all. And all I can say is, all in all, it was a great trip, physically very challenging. I'm glad that I did it for a number of reasons, and I feel that this begins another new chapter in my life's adventure. Being called to go do something like this is not forever. It's a calling, not something that you just go do. I talked to somebody about this some days ago. It's it's not recreational drugs. It's not for relaxation. It's a calling. And 5 years to the day to return and to challenge myself, number one, to see if I could do this again, was a big deal with me. And I succeeded, and I was glad I did. I had to push through some things, physically and emotionally. And but I also felt that it was another step in just my own personal journey. Healing the divine masculine was a theme that kept coming up and will keep coming up. I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but I know that it's going to be part of 2025 at least, and we'll see what happens. But that's a summary of the trip. And if you made it this far, thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. We definitely need our men to do things like this, to whatever it takes to connect to our king and our warrior spirit. When I volunteered to do the class for the men, the women were ecstatic. The women were, yes, we want this. We want our men to find and connect to their divine masculine. They were all for it. And one of the women, Margie, came up to me during the week and she goes, David, I'm so glad you're doing this. But by Friday morning, everybody was wiped out, me especially. And so the excitement level had worn off. And I was told Friday night that, this is your trip for you. And so I'm going to do this. I'm going to share what I have learned and what I'm experiencing with my brothers in a different way. And whoever is drawn to it, will be drawn to it and on their own journey. That's the way I look at it. So that's my summary for the week. It was quite amazing. I can't find my little remote. Wherever you went, must have fallen on the ground somewhere. So I will. There it is. Yep. So I will say goodbye. This is a long video, but I hope you enjoyed it if you made it this far. If you have any questions, let me know. I'd be happy to try to answer them. And until next time, we will say goodbye. Cosmic energy, earth energy, heart energy. Send loving heart energy out to all beings, all dimensions, all timelines, all realities. May this day be filled with compassion, loving kindness, and courage. Until next time, thank you.